She stood on stage in the dress she'd spent 3 years perfecting when her ex stormed in and ripped it apart in front of everyone. The crowd gasped, cameras flashed, and her career shattered in seconds. What her ex didn't know, the man watching from the front row wasn't just any investor. He was someone who never forgot a face, and he'd just decided hers was worth protecting. The champagne glass in Celia Hart's hand trembled slightly as she watched the crowd filter into the Milan Fashion Hall. Not Milan, Italy, Milan, a trendy district in downtown Chicago where old warehouses had been converted into galleries and showrooms. She'd saved for 3 years to afford a spot in this exhibition. 3 years of 4 a.m. mornings, burned fingers from her sewing machine, and living off ramen while other designers had trust funds. Tonight was supposed to change everything. "Miss Hart, you're on in 5 minutes," a production assistant whispered, clipboard pressed to her chest. Celia nodded, smoothing down the emerald silk evening gown she wore, one of her own designs. The fabric caught the light like water, with hand-stitched beadwork that had taken her 80 hours to complete. She designed it to tell a story, a woman rising from darkness into light, each bead representing a step forward. She didn't know how prophetic that would become. The exhibition hall buzzed with Chicago's fashion elite. Investors in sharp suits, buyers from department stores, influencers with ring lights already set up. Celia had counted 12 confirmed attendees who could change her life with a single order. Her collection, 6 pieces of sustainable evening wear, hung on mannequins near the runway, each one a prayer stitched into fabric. "Celia Hart, everyone," the announcer's voice boomed. She stepped onto the runway, and for exactly 8 seconds, everything was perfect. The lights warmed her skin. Cameras flashed. Someone in the front row leaned forward with interest, a man in a dark suit whose face she couldn't quite make out through the glare. Then the door at the back slammed open. Celia. Her blood turned to ice. She knew that voice. Marco Castellano stumbled into the hall, his shirt half untucked, his eyes wild. The sharp smell of whiskey preceded him like a warning. Security moved toward him, but he was already weaving through the crowd with the determination of the drunk and angry. "Ladies and gentlemen," he slurred, spreading his arms wide in mock presentation, "let me tell you about the artist you're about to waste your money on." "Sir, you need to leave," a security guard reached for his arm. Marco shook him off. 3 years. 3 years I supported her. Paid her rent. Bought her materials. And how does she repay me? He pointed an accusing finger at Celia, who stood frozen on the runway. "She leaves me for her career." The crowd murmured. Phones came out. Celia saw the red recording lights multiply like predatory eyes. "Marco, please," her voice came out smaller than she wanted. She hated herself for it. "This isn't the place." "Oh, this is the perfect place." He climbed onto the runway, and security hesitated. They couldn't create a scene, but he was already making one. "You want to see her craftsmanship? Let me show you." He lunged. Celia tried to step back, but her heel caught. Marco's hand clamped around her arm, the same grip that had left bruises she'd covered with concealer for months after their breakup. His other hand found the delicate beadwork at her shoulder. "Let's see how well this holds up." The sound of tearing silk cut through the hall like a scream. Celia felt the dress give way, felt the cool air hit her back as the fabric split from shoulder to waist. The beads scattered, clicking against the runway floor like fallen tears. She clutched the front of the gown to her chest, trying to hold together both the dress and her dignity. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed brighter. She heard someone say, "Oh my God, is this part of the show?" It wasn't. This was humiliation, raw and public. Security finally grabbed Marco, dragging him backward. He laughed, actually laughed, as they hauled him toward the exit. "There's your sustainable fashion. Can't even last 5 minutes. You're a fraud, Celia. A fraud." The doors closed behind him, but the damage was done. Celia stood in the spotlight, her ruined dress hanging from her body, beads still rolling across the stage. 3 years of work. Her entire savings, every hope she'd carried, destroyed in 30 seconds. She could run. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to disappear into the Chicago night and never come back. But then she saw them, the investors checking their watches, preparing to leave, the buyers already turning away, her entire future evaporating. And something inside her went quiet and cold. She straightened her spine. With shaking hands, she held the torn fabric together at her back and continued walking. One step, then another. She made it to the end of the runway, turned with as much grace as she could manage and walked back. Her eyes stayed forward. She didn't let them see her cry. When she reached the curtain, she finally let herself breathe. The applause was scattered and uncomfortable, the kind people give at funerals. Most of the crowd was already leaving, murmuring about the spectacle. She heard one investor say, "What a disaster. Can't even control her personal life." Celia stumbled into the backstage area and locked herself in the bathroom. Only then did she look in the mirror. The dress hung in tatters. Her makeup was smudged. She looked like a victim. She refused to be one. Her emergency sewing kit sat in her bag. With steady hands born from years of practice, she began to stitch. The dress couldn't be saved, not really, but she could make it presentable. She could walk out of here with her head high. The bathroom door was solid, but she heard voices outside. Murmurs. Her assistant, Sarah, saying, "Just give her a minute." Someone else replied, "Too quiet to hear." When Celia finally emerged 20 minutes later, most of the crowd had left. Her collection still hung on the mannequins, untouched. No one had even looked at them after Marco's scene. Sarah rushed over, her eyes red. "Celia, I'm so sorry. That bastard." "It's fine." Celia's voice was steady now, empty. "Help me pack up, Miss Hart." She turned. The man from the front row stood a few feet away. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd thought, maybe early 30s, with dark eyes that missed nothing. His suit probably cost more than her entire collection. Everything about him suggested power, held carefully in check. "I'm fine, thank you," she said automatically. "I wasn't going to ask if you were." His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "I was going to say that you handled disrespect with more grace than most people I know." Celia stared at him. In her experience, men who witnessed her humiliation either looked away in embarrassment or enjoyed the show. He did neither. "Who are you?" she asked. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "Someone who knows quality when he sees it. Your work is extraordinary, Miss Hart. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." He turned and walked away before she could respond, disappearing through the exit with two men she hadn't noticed flanking him. Sarah appeared at her elbow. "Holy shit. Do you know who that was?"
No.
"Should I?" Sarah's face had gone pale. Celia, that was Lorenzo Romano. The name meant nothing to her. But by morning, she would understand exactly what it meant when a Romano took an interest in your life. And by then, it would be far too late to walk away. The VIP lounge restroom had better lighting than Celia's entire apartment. She stood at the marble sink, needle and thread moving with practiced precision through the torn silk. Her hands had finally stopped shaking. Adrenaline did that, flooded your system, then left you hollow. Outside, she could hear the muffled sounds of the exhibition winding down. Laughter. The clink of glasses. People who hadn't just watched their career implode in real time. The dress was beyond saving, but she could make it functional. She'd learned that skill early, how to fix things that should have been thrown away. Her mother had taught her before the cancer took her. "Baby girl," she'd said, fingers guiding Celia's through a stitch. "The most beautiful things are the ones that survived breaking." Celia wondered what her mother would say now. The door opened. Sarah slipped inside, her expression tight with worry. Security escorted him out. "He's gone." She held up her phone. "But Celia, people are already posting." Celia's stomach dropped. "Show me." Sarah hesitated, then turned the screen around. The video had been taken from multiple angles. Marco stumbling onto the runway, his hand gripping her arm. The moment the dress tore, captured in high definition, the sound of ripping fabric somehow worse on video than it had been in person. The comments were already flooding in. Is this performance art? Her dress literally fell apart on the runway, LMAO. Who's the drunk guy though? This is messy. Designer can't even make a dress that stays together. Sarah pulled the phone back. Don't read them. They don't matter. But they did matter. In fashion, perception was everything. Celia could already see it unfolding. The investors who'd been interested would ghost her. The buyers would move on. Marco had wanted to destroy her, and in 30 seconds, he'd succeeded. I need to finish packing, Celia said quietly. She tied off the final stitch, smoothing the fabric. The repair was visible, she'd meant it to be. Let them see the work it took to put something back together. When she finally left the restroom, the exhibition hall had mostly emptied. Her collection hung abandoned near the runway, 6 pieces that represented 3 years of her life.
No tags. No buyers.
Just beautiful things no one wanted. Sarah was talking to one of the event coordinators, probably apologizing for the scene. Celia started taking down her designs, carefully folding each one. Miss Hart. She turned. Lorenzo Romano stood beside her mannequins, studying her work with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Up close, she noticed details she'd missed before. The way he moved with deliberate control, the thin scar along his jawline, the fact that 2 men in dark suits stood near the exits, watching. Mr. Romano. She wasn't sure how she was supposed to address him. Sarah's reaction had suggested he was important, but Celia didn't run in circles where people had security details. You stitched your dress in the bathroom, he observed. It wasn't a question. Celia felt exposed, like he could see through the silk to the hasty repair work underneath. I didn't want to be remembered as the woman who ran away crying. Smart, he picked up one of her sketches from the display table, a design for a structured jacket with origami-style folds. You understand that tonight wasn't about your work. It was about a small man trying to make himself feel big by destroying something beautiful. Celia's throat tightened. She hadn't expected kindness, especially not from a stranger who looked like he'd never experienced a moment of powerlessness in his life. It doesn't matter why it happened, she said. The damage is done. Damage can be repaired. Lorenzo set the sketch down carefully. Or it can be transformed into something stronger. Is that supposed to be inspirational? The words came out sharper than she intended, but she was exhausted and her entire career had just been humiliated on video. She didn't have energy for wealthy men playing philosopher. To her surprise, Lorenzo smiled, not the practiced smile of networking events, but something genuine and slightly amused.
No.
It's supposed to be practical advice. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a card. Simple black stock with silver lettering. Just a name and a phone number. When you're ready to rebuild, call this number. Celia looked at the card but didn't take it. I don't need charity. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering opportunity. He placed the card on the table beside her sketches. Your work is exceptional, Miss Hart. That doesn't change because a drunk idiot tore a dress. You don't know me, or my work. I know enough. Lorenzo's dark eyes held hers. I know you stitched that dress in a bathroom so you could finish what you started. I know you're still standing when most people would have quit. And I know you're going to walk out of here and figure out your next move, because that's who you are. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. The man who attacked you tonight? He's going to try again. Men like him always do. They can't stand watching someone rise above them. Lorenzo's voice dropped, taking on an edge that made Celia's skin prickle. When he does, call me. I can handle Marco. I'm sure you can. Lorenzo's expression shifted into something colder, something that reminded Celia he was more than just a man in an expensive suit. But you shouldn't have to. He walked away, his security falling into step beside him. The exhibition hall door closed with a soft click. Sarah appeared at Celia's elbow, staring after him. Did Lorenzo Romano just give you his personal number? Celia picked up the card, studying the embossed lettering. Who is he? Sarah's eyes went wide. You really don't know? Should I? Celia, Sarah lowered her voice to barely a whisper. The Romano's own half of Chicago. Celia's phone started buzzing at 6 a.m. She'd barely slept, lying in her studio apartment above the boutique, replaying the moment Marco tore her dress over and over. Each time, she tried to rewrite it, imagined herself stepping back faster, security moving quicker, the whole nightmare just not happening. But it had happened, and now her phone wouldn't stop. She grabbed it from the nightstand, squinting at the screen. 53 notifications.
No, 60.
The number kept climbing. The first message was from an old classmate from design school. OMG, Celia, are you okay? I just saw the video. Her stomach twisted. She opened Twitter. She was trending. Not her name, not her brand. Just #runwayfail. The video from last night had gone viral. Someone had edited it, adding dramatic music and slow-motion replays of the dress tearing. The caption read, "When your sustainable fashion can't sustain 5 minutes goal." 400,000 views. 20,000 retweets. Celia's hands went numb. She scrolled through the comments, each one a small knife. This is why you don't buy handmade, LOL. The dress literally fell apart. How is she a real designer? I feel bad, but also, maybe don't make trash clothes? Plot twist. The drunk guys saved people from wasting their money. She wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, she kept scrolling, torturing herself with each new comment, each shared video, each joke made at her expense. Someone had created a meme using a frame of her face right after the tear, eyes wide, mouth open, with a caption. When you realize your career is over, it had been shared 8,000 times. A knock on her apartment door made her jump. She pulled on a robe and found Sarah standing in the hallway, holding 2 coffees and a tablet. Don't look at social media, Sarah said immediately. Too late. Sarah winced. It's bad, isn't it? They sat at Celia's tiny kitchen table, really just a folding card table sheet covered with fabric, and Sarah opened the tablet. It's not just social media. Fashion blogs picked it up. She pulled up Style Wire, one of the industry's biggest publications. The headline made Celia's chest tighten. Designer's dress falls apart at Chicago exhibition when handmade means handmade disasters. The article was brutal. It barely mentioned Marco, instead focusing on structural failures and questioning whether Celia had the skills for high-end fashion. They'd included photos of her other pieces, pointing out concerning stitching and questionable construction. They're lying, Celia whispered. Those photos are zoomed in and edited. That stitching is perfect. I know. But that doesn't matter, Sarah swiped to another site. Look. Vogue's industry newsletter had a brief mention. Last night's incident at the Milan Fashion Hall raises questions about designer vetting processes. When personal drama overshadows craft, everyone loses. 3 brands that had expressed interest in her work had sent polite emails overnight, all variations of the same message. We've decided to go in a different direction. Celia felt like she was drowning in slow motion.
Her phone buzzed again.
This time it was Instagram. Marco had posted. Against her better judgment, she opened it. Marco stood in his apartment, holding a glass of something amber-colored, smirking at the camera. The caption read, "Truth hurts, doesn't it? I exposed a fraud last night. She was taking money from investors for dresses that literally fall apart. Someone had to tell the truth. You're welcome, fashion world." Wineglass #no regrets #truth-teller #real talk. The post already had 1,500 likes. Comments poured in. King shit, honestly. You saved people so much money. The hero we needed. She probably cheated on you too. Women like that always do. Celia's vision blurred. Sarah grabbed the phone from her hands. Stop. Stop looking at this poison. He's winning, Celia's voice cracked. He destroyed me, and people are calling him a hero. Then we fight back. We sue him. We. With what money, Sarah? Celia gestured at her apartment. The exposed brick walls she'd tried to make charming with string lights, the second-hand furniture, the sewing machine that was worth more than everything else she owned combined. I spent everything on last night. I don't have a lawyer. I don't have savings. I barely have rent. Sarah set her jaw. Then we tell your side of the story. We post your own video. And say what? That my drunk ex-boyfriend assaulted me on a runway. Celia laughed bitterly. Half the comments will say I deserved it or that I'm playing victim. The other half won't care because the memes are funny.
Her phone buzzed again.
Another email. This one from the Chicago Fashion Collective, formally withdrawing her membership, pending review of recent events. 3 years of work. Gone in 12 hours. Sarah squeezed her hand. We'll figure this out. You're the most talented designer I know. That hasn't changed. But it had changed. Talent didn't matter if no one would give you a chance to show it. Talent didn't pay rent. Talent didn't erase viral videos or stop strangers from making jokes about your worst moment. Celia looked at the black business card still sitting on her counter from last night. Lorenzo Romano's number, embossed in silver. When you're ready to rebuild, call this number. She wasn't ready. She was broken and humiliated and so tired she could barely think straight. But she was also out of options. And in the back of her mind, she kept hearing Lorenzo's words. The man who attacked you tonight? He's going to try again. She looked at Marco's Instagram post, his smug smile, the comments calling him a hero. He wasn't done destroying her. He was just getting started. Rain hammered against the windows of Lombard Street Social Club, a private establishment that didn't exist on any map. The kind of place where Chicago's real power brokers met when they needed conversations to stay off the record. Lorenzo Romano sat in a leather booth at the back, a glass of scotch untouched on the table. His consigliere, Vincent Calabrese, slid into the seat across from him, shaking water from his coat. You're going to ruin that upholstery, Lorenzo said mildly. You own the place. Send yourself a bill. Vincent pulled out a tablet, his expression serious. I have what you asked for. Lorenzo had requested the information 6 hours ago, right after leaving the exhibition. By the time he'd reached his car, he'd already decided Marco Castellano was a problem that needed solving. The question was how. Vincent swiped through files.
Marco Antoni Castellano.
29. Works in his father's commercial real estate firm, though works is generous. Shows up twice a week, mostly to use the office for his social media brand. Social media brand, Lorenzo's voice carried distaste. He calls himself a lifestyle influencer, posts about watches he can't afford, cars he doesn't own, and clubs that let him in because his father has money. Vincent pulled up Marco's Instagram. Currently at 68,000 followers, most of them bought. His engagement rate is garbage. Lorenzo studied Marco's feed. Gym selfies. Bottles of Grey Goose. Photos with women who looked uncomfortable. And now the post about Celia, already going viral. His financials? Leveraged to his eyeballs. He's got a gambling problem, owes about 40 grand to some small-time bookies in Cicero. His father cut him off 3 months ago after he wrecked a company car drunk. The apartment he's in? Behind on rent. Lorenzo took a slow sip of scotch. And Celia Hart. Vincent's expression softened slightly.
Clean.
No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. She emigrated from New York 4 years ago. Put herself through design school at the Art Institute. Her mother died of cancer when she was 20. She paid for the treatment out of pocket. Went into debt doing it. She's been climbing out ever since. The ex-boyfriend. They dated for 18 months. She ended it after he hit her. She never pressed charges. He threatened to destroy her reputation if she did. Vincent looked up from the tablet. Apparently, he's making good on that threat now. Lorenzo's fingers tightened around his glass. He'd seen the video a dozen times, studying it. The way Marco grabbed Celia's arm, the practiced cruelty in how he tore the dress. This wasn't drunken rage. This was calculated humiliation. He planned it, Lorenzo said quietly. Security footage from the entrance shows him waiting outside for 20 minutes before he went in. He wasn't stumbling when he arrived. He faked the drunk act once he was inside. Vincent pulled up the footage. Marco, perfectly steady, checking his phone, then practicing a stumble before entering. He wanted to destroy her, and he wanted it documented.
Why?
Near as I can tell, she's talented enough to actually succeed, and he can't stand it. He's a failure pretending to be successful. She's the real thing. Vincent closed the tablet. So, what do you want to do about it? Lorenzo didn't answer immediately. Through the window, he could see Chicago's skyline, rain-blurred and dark. His family had controlled the city's underbelly for 3 generations. His father had taught him that power meant knowing when to act and when to wait. Nothing, Lorenzo said finally. Vincent blinked. Nothing. Not yet. Lorenzo set down his glass. I want to see how she responds first. Boss, this guy assaulted her in public. He's spreading lies about her work. He could ruin her. He could, Lorenzo agreed. Or she could prove she's strong enough to fight back without me. Vincent leaned back, studying his boss. You're testing her. I'm giving her a choice. Lorenzo's voice was quiet but firm. If I step in now, if I make this problem disappear, she becomes another person I control. Another business I own. I don't want that. What do you want? Lorenzo thought about Celia in that bathroom, stitching her torn dress with hands that barely shook. The way she'd walked out with her head high when anyone else would have run. The quiet defiance in her voice when she told him she didn't need charity. I want to see if she's who I think she is. Vincent was quiet for a moment. And if Marco escalates? If he hurts her? The temperature in the booth seemed to drop 10 degrees. Lorenzo's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, something cold and absolute. Then I won't be testing anymore. Vincent nodded slowly. He'd known Lorenzo since they were kids in the neighborhood, had watched him transform from a street fighter to the man who controlled half of Chicago's underground economy.
He knew that tone.
I'll keep watching, Vincent said. Close. But not too close. Lorenzo stood, buttoning his suit jacket. And Vincent, make sure our friends in Cicero know that Marco's debts are not to be collected. Not yet. You want him comfortable? I want him confident enough to make another mistake. Lorenzo picked up his coat. Men like Marco always do. They can't help themselves. They see someone rising and they have to tear them down. And when he does, Lorenzo headed for the door, his voice carrying back through the dim room. Then he'll learn the difference between tearing a dress and breaking a life. And I'll teach him which one I consider unforgivable. The door closed behind him, leaving Vincent alone with the sound of rain and the weight of what was coming. Marco Castellano had no idea his countdown had already started. The Chicago textile warehouse sat in an industrial district where Lake Street met the expressway, all concrete and rust and broken dreams. Celia had been coming here since design school, back when she could barely afford fabric scraps. Today, she was bargain hunting with a different kind of desperation. 3 days had passed since the exhibition. The viral videos had mostly cycled out of people's feeds, replaced by newer disasters. But the damage lingered. Her website traffic had spiked, people looking at her work out of morbid curiosity, but sales hadn't followed. The Fashion Collective membership was still suspended. 2 scheduled consultations had canceled. Sarah had suggested hiding, rebranding, maybe moving to a different city and starting over. Celia had decided to fight instead. If she couldn't get high-end clients, she'd build from the ground up. A new collection, affordable but beautiful, sold directly to real people instead of investors. It meant using cheaper materials, simpler techniques. It meant swallowing her pride. But it meant survival. The warehouse smelled like dust and possibility. Bolts of fabric stretched to the ceiling in every direction: silk, cotton, wool, synthetic blends. Celia ran her fingers over a roll of charcoal gray wool, calculating costs in her head. That's 40% off this week, called Jerry, the warehouse manager. He'd known her since she was a student stealing fabric samples. Nice weight for fall coats. I'll take 20 yards. She couldn't afford 30, which was what she actually needed. She'd have to adjust her designs. As Jerry cut the fabric, Celia wandered deeper into the warehouse, looking for lining material. She turned a corner into the luxury section. Fabrics she usually just looked at longingly, and nearly collided with a man examining a bolt of navy pinstripe wool. "Sorry," she muttered, stepping back. No harm done. The man was in his 50s, silver-haired, wearing a perfectly tailored gray suit. He studied her with sharp eyes. "You're a designer?" Celia hesitated. After the last few days, admitting that felt dangerous. "Yes. I thought so. You have the look, the way you touch fabric like you're reading it." He extended a hand. "Robert Chen. I represent a private buyer." Celia Hart. She shook his hand, her guard up. In her experience, men who approached women in warehouses wanted something, and it usually wasn't professional. But Robert's handshake was brief and businesslike. He pulled out a leather notebook, flipping to a page covered in precise handwriting. "My employer is looking for a designer to create 3 custom suits. Very specific requirements." He showed her the notes. Wool and silk blend, structured but not stiff. Concealed interior pockets here, here, and here. His finger traced the diagram. Special reinforced lining, durable but lightweight. Celia studied the specifications. The details were unusual, but not impossible. The interior pockets were positioned oddly, one at the small of the back, another inside the left sleeve. And the reinforced lining. Her stomach went cold. She'd seen these specs before in an article about executive protection. These weren't ordinary suit modifications. They were designed to conceal weapons and body armor while maintaining a normal silhouette. This was a commission for someone who expected violence. Celia looked up at Robert, choosing her words carefully. "This is specialized work."
Yes.
"Which is why the compensation is $20,000 per suit. 60,000 total, half up front." Robert's expression didn't change. "My employer appreciates quality and discretion."
$62,000.
That was more than she'd made all last year. That was 6 months of rent, new equipment, the ability to rebuild without drowning. That was survival. It was also clearly connected to something she shouldn't touch. "Who's your employer?" she asked. "Someone who saw your work at the exhibition and was impressed." Robert closed his notebook. "Someone who believes you deserve better than viral videos and canceled contracts." The pieces clicked together. The specifications, the timing, the phrase "saw your work at the exhibition." "Lorenzo Romano sent you," Celia said quietly. Robert's slight smile confirmed it. "Mr. Romano appreciates craftsmanship. He's willing to invest in talent, especially talent that's been unfairly maligned. This is charity. This is business. Mr. Romano needs suits made to exact specifications. You're a designer who can deliver quality work. The fact that the commission helps you rebuild is simply efficient resource allocation." Celia looked at the specifications again. 3 suits.
$62,000.
The chance to prove her work was worth something, even if the only person buying was a man who, according to Sarah, owned half of Chicago's underworld. "I need to think about it," she said. Of course, Robert handed her a business card, different from Lorenzo's, with a downtown address and formal office number. "The offer stands for 48 hours. After that, Mr. Romano will find another designer." He left without another word, disappearing into the maze of fabric bolts. Celia stood alone, holding the card, her mind racing. Taking this commission meant accepting Lorenzo's help, even if it came disguised as business. It meant entering his world, at least peripherally. It meant designing clothes for a man who probably did things she didn't want to know about. But it also meant staying in Chicago.
Keeping her boutique.
Fighting instead of running. Jerry appeared with her wrapped wool. "Find everything you needed?" "I'm not sure," Celia admitted, tucking Robert's card into her pocket next to Lorenzo's black card. "I'm really not sure." As she loaded fabric into her car, rain starting to fall again, her phone buzzed. Another Instagram notification. Marco had posted again. Against her better judgment, she looked. He'd recorded a video, sitting in a bar, surrounded by laughing friends. "So people keep asking if I feel bad about the runway thing," he said, grinning. "And Honestly,
No.
someone had to expose the truth. Celia Hart is a scam artist, and I did everyone a favor. You're welcome, Chicago. The comments were already flooding with support. Celia sat in her car, rain drumming on the roof, staring at Marco's smug face. She pulled out both business cards, Lorenzo's personal number and Robert's office line. 48 hours to decide. She'd spent 3 years building her career the right way, no shortcuts, no compromises, no help from anyone. And in 30 seconds, Marco had destroyed it all. Maybe it was time to stop playing fair. Celia set up her phone on a stack of fabric bolts in her boutique, adjusting the angle until the light hit right. Behind her, her workspace was visible, the industrial sewing machine, sketches pinned to the wall, spools of thread organized by color.
Real. Honest.
Hers. Sarah watched from the doorway. You sure about this? No, Celia pressed record anyway. But I'm doing it. She took a breath and looked directly at the camera. I'm Celia Hart, and I'm a fashion designer here in Chicago. By now, some of you have probably seen the video from the exhibition last week. The one where my dress got torn on the runway. She kept her voice steady, conversational. I want to talk about that, but not in the way you might think. She held up a piece of fabric, the emerald silk from her ruined dress, carefully preserved. This is the dress that fell apart, according to the headlines. Except it didn't fall apart. It was ripped by someone who grabbed it with both hands and tore it deliberately. She demonstrated on a scrap piece, showing the force required. Silk is strong. This particular weave can support significant weight. But nothing is indestructible when someone wants to destroy it. Celia set the fabric down and picked up one of her completed pieces, a structure blazer with hand-stitched lapels. I don't make fast fashion. I don't use factories or mass production. Every piece I create is designed to last years, not seasons. I use sustainable materials, natural dyes, and traditional techniques that have been around for centuries. She turned the blazer inside out, showing the meticulous interior work. This isn't about trends. It's about creating clothing that respects both the people who wear it and the planet we live on. She looked back at the camera and, for a moment, let them see the exhaustion, the hurt, the anger she'd been carrying. What happened at that exhibition wasn't about my work. It was about someone trying to humiliate me because he couldn't control me anymore. And you know what? It worked. I was humiliated. The videos hurt. The comments hurt. Watching my career get reduced to a meme hurt. Celia's voice strengthened. But my work is still good. My techniques are still sound. And I'm still here. She gestured to her workspace. So if you're interested in sustainable fashion, in clothing made by hand with actual care, I'm taking commissions. Small batch, custom work. Because I didn't spend 3 years building this to let one bad night take it away. She reached forward and stopped the recording. Sarah was quiet for a moment. That was really good, actually. You didn't sound defensive or angry. Just honest. Because I am honest, Celia reviewed the footage, her stomach tight with anxiety. Now we just have to hope anyone cares. She posted the video to Instagram, YouTube, and her website. Then she set her phone face down on the work table and tried not to watch the numbers. I'm making coffee, Sarah announced. The strong kind. While Sarah clattered around the tiny kitchenette, Celia pulled out Robert Chen's business card. 48 hours, he'd said. She had until tomorrow to decide about Lorenzo's commission.
$62.
Her rent was due in 2 weeks. She had enough for maybe 1 month if she ate ramen and didn't use heat. After that, her phone buzzed. Then again. Then it didn't stop. Sarah rushed back. Is it going viral? Celia flipped it over, her heart hammering. Comments were flooding in. This is the response. Calm, professional, just facts. I'm a seamstress, and thank you for explaining how fabric actually works. Just ordered from your website. That blazer is gorgeous. Why didn't anyone mention he grabbed her? That's assault. Everyone dragging her has never made anything by hand in their lives. The video hit 1,000 views. Then 5,000. Her website traffic spiked, And this time, the sales counter started moving. 1 order. 3 orders.
7.
Oh my God, Sarah breathed. Celia, look at this. A fashion blogger with 500,000 followers had shared the video. Remember the runway fail, designer everyone was mocking?
Here's her side.
Maybe we should think before we pile on people. Her work is actually stunning. The shares multiplied. Other designers started commenting, talking about their own experiences with sabotage and harassment. Someone dug up statistics on violence against women in the fashion industry. The narrative was shifting. By evening, Celia had 43 new orders. Small things mostly, custom blouses, tailored skirts, but real money from real people who wanted her work. Sarah ordered pizza to celebrate. They ate it on the boutique floor, surrounded by fabric and thread, watching the numbers climb. You did it, Sarah said. You actually turned it around? Maybe, Celia refreshed her Instagram. The video had broken 100,000 views. Or maybe this is just another kind of viral moment, and tomorrow everyone forgets again.
Her phone rang.
Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello. Miss Hart. Robert Chun. I wanted to inform you that your response video was very well done. Dignified and effective. Celia sat up straighter. Thank you, but I haven't made a decision about the commission yet. I understand. However, I should warn you, the person who attacked you is posted again. About an hour ago. Her stomach dropped. She pulled up Marco's Instagram with shaking hands. The post was a video. Marco, drunk again, laughing with his friends. But this time the caption made her blood run cold. Celia's trying to play victim now with her sob story video. Don't fall for it. I have proof she's been sleeping with investors to get ahead. I have receipts. Watch this space. The truth is coming. Smirking face. The post already had thousands of likes. Sarah read it over her shoulder and swore. He's lying. He has to be lying. Of course he's lying, Celia's voice was hollow. But it doesn't matter. People will believe him anyway. Robert's voice came through the phone, still calm. Miss Hart, my employer anticipated this escalation. The offer for the commission still stands. As does his previous suggestion that you call when you need assistance. Celia looked at the black business card she'd been carrying for 4 days. When he does, call me. Lorenzo had known. Somehow, he'd known Marco wouldn't stop. What kind of assistance? She asked quietly. The kind that ensures Mr. Castellano understands there are consequences for his actions. Robert paused. But that's your decision to make. The 48-hour window for the commission closes tomorrow at noon. Good night, Miss Hart. He hung up. Celia sat on her boutique floor, pizza going cold, her phone full of supportive comments that might mean nothing by morning, and Marco's threat hanging over her like a knife. She'd fought back once. But Marco was preparing to fight dirtier. And she was running out of ways to defend herself alone. The parking lot behind Celia's boutique was poorly lit, something she'd been meaning to complain to her landlord about for months. Now, at 9 p.m., loading fabric samples into her car, she regretted not pushing harder. The boutique sat in a transitional neighborhood, trendy coffee shops mixed with pawn shops, art galleries next to check-cashing places. Safe enough during the day. At night, it got quieter, darker. Celia popped her trunk, balancing 3 bolts of fabric she needed for tomorrow's orders. The video had brought in more work than she could handle alone, which was a good problem to have. Sarah had already gone home, promising to return early to help. She was reaching for the second load when she heard footsteps. 2 men emerged from the shadows near the dumpster. Both wore dark clothes, their faces hard and unfamiliar. Not the usual homeless men who sometimes slept behind the building. These men moved with purpose. Celia's hand found her keys, threading them between her fingers the way her mother had taught her. Can I help you? Celia Hart. The taller one had a Boston accent, which felt wrong in Chicago. We need you to come with us. I don't think so, she edged toward her car door. I'm calling the police. Don't, the second man moved to block her path. He was shorter, thick-necked, with a scar running through his eyebrow. This doesn't have to be difficult. Celia's heart hammered. I don't know who you think I am, but we know exactly who you are. The tall one stepped closer. You're Romano's new girlfriend, which makes you valuable. I'm not. I don't even know him. You have the wrong person. The scarred man laughed.
Sure.
That's why Lorenzo Romano's been having you watched for a week. That's why his consigliere paid off your ex's gambling debts. He grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. Come on. Let's go have a conversation with our boss about Mr. Romano's priorities. Celia tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. The tall one moved to her other side, boxing her in. Her mind raced, scream, fight, run, but they were bigger, faster, and the street was empty. Please, she whispered, hating how small her voice sounded. Please, I'm nobody. I'm just a designer. I'm not involved in whatever you think. A black sedan pulled into the parking lot, its headlights cutting through the darkness. It stopped 20 feet away, idling. The two men froze. A driver stepped out, an older man in a dark suit, his movements careful and deliberate. He didn't say anything. He simply walked to the rear passenger door, opened it, and pulled out a cell phone. Then he held it up, facing the two men. The scarred man's grip on Celia's arm loosened. What the hell? The driver pressed a button. A voice came through the phone speaker, clear and cold. Gentlemen.
Lorenzo Romano.
Even through the phone, his voice made the temperature drop. The two men went rigid. Mr. Romano, the tall one said, his bravado evaporating. We didn't know. We thought she was fair game since you hadn't made it official. You thought wrong. Lorenzo's voice was quiet, which somehow made it worse. The woman you're touching is under my protection. She has been since the night we met. The scarred man released Celia's arm like she'd burned him. We're with the Moretti family. We didn't mean any disrespect to you personally. We just thought. You thought you could leverage her against me. You thought kidnapping her would give you an advantage in our current negotiations. A pause. Tell me, do you know what happened to the last people who tried to use civilians against me? Neither man answered. They disappeared, Lorenzo continued, his tone conversational. Not killed, that would be too quick. Just removed. Some of them are in Montana, working fishing boats in the freezing cold. Others are in Arizona, digging ditches in 100-degree heat. They send their earnings to the families they left behind, and they don't complain because they understand they're lucky to be breathing. The driver still held the phone up, his expression neutral, like he'd done this 100 times. Now, Lorenzo said, you're going to walk away. You're going to tell your boss that Celia Hart is not to be touched, not to be threatened, not to be mentioned in any context whatsoever. If I hear her name from your organization again, I won't send you to Montana. I'll send your entire family. Yes, sir. The tall man was already backing away. Understood.
We're sorry.
It won't happen again. It won't, Lorenzo agreed. Because if it does, you won't live long enough to regret it. The line went dead. The two men practically ran to a car parked across the street, tires squealing as they fled. Celia stood frozen, her arm throbbing where the man had grabbed her, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. The driver approached, his expression kind despite the violence he'd just orchestrated. Miss Hart, are you injured?
No.
I'm fine. She wasn't fine. She was shaking. How did you know I was in trouble? Mr. Romano has had security watching you since the exhibition. When those men entered the parking lot, we were notified. He gestured to the sedan. I can drive you home if you'd prefer not to be alone. You've been watching me? For a week. The violation should have made her angry, but right now, it had probably saved her life. Mr. Romano takes protection seriously. The driver's tone suggested this wasn't unusual, especially for people he cares about. He doesn't even know me. He knows enough. The driver opened the sedan's rear door. Please, Miss Hart. Let me at least follow you to ensure you arrive home safely. Celia looked at her car, at the dark parking lot, at the street where two men had just tried to kidnap her because they thought she was connected to Lorenzo Romano. She'd tried to handle this alone. She tried to rebuild without help. to fight Marco without involving anyone else. But Marco wasn't her only problem anymore. Just by being seen with Lorenzo, just by accepting his interest, she'd become a target for his enemies. And she hadn't even accepted his help yet. Actually, Celia said quietly, pulling out the black business card she'd been carrying. Can you take me to him? To Mr. Romano? The driver's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. He's been expecting you, Miss Hart. The Romano Tower pierced Chicago's skyline like a blade, 60 stories of steel and glass that dominated the financial district. Celia had passed it 100 times without knowing who owned it. Now, riding the private elevator to the penthouse, she understood that she'd been living in a different Chicago than Lorenzo Romano. His city had layers she'd never seen, power structures she'd never imagined. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. No hallway, no buffer. Just immediate, overwhelming luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the space, offering a 360-degree view of Chicago at night. The furniture was modern and minimal, all clean lines and expensive materials. Original artwork hung on the walls, pieces Celia recognized from her art history classes, paintings that belonged in museums. Lorenzo stood by the windows, still wearing the dark suit from earlier, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He didn't turn when she entered. The Moretti brothers, he said quietly, are not subtle men. I apologize that you had to experience their approach. You knew they'd come for me. Celia's voice was steadier than she felt. That's why you had people watching. I suspected. When word spread that I'd shown interest in a designer, certain parties would see an opportunity. Now he turned, and his dark eyes held something that might have been regret. I should have warned you more explicitly. That's my failure.
You've been
involved in my life for a while, haven't you? Celia moved deeper into the penthouse, her designer's eye automatically noting details, the custom millwork, the way the lighting was positioned to highlight the art, the textile commission, the security. Robert said you've been watching me since the exhibition, but that's not true, is it? Lorenzo took a slow sip of his drink. Would you like the truth, or would you prefer to keep believing you built everything alone? The question felt like a slap. What does that mean? It means I've been your anonymous investor for 2 years, Miss Hart. He set down his glass and pulled a folder from the desk. The grant you received from the Chicago Arts Foundation? I funded it. The boutique lease you thought you negotiated yourself? I bought the building and set your rent below market value. The feature in Midwest Style magazine? I know the editor. Celia felt the floor tilt beneath her feet.
No.
That's not. I earned those things. You did earn them, Lorenzo's voice was firm. Your talent earned them. I simply made sure the right people noticed. Without your work, none of my involvement would have mattered. Why? The word came out broken. Why would you do that? Lorenzo walked to the windows, looking out at the city he controlled in ways Celia was only beginning to understand. 2 years ago, I attended a small exhibition at the Art Institute. Student work mostly forgettable. But there was one piece, a dress made from recycled materials, every stitch by hand, that showed more skill than designers with decades of experience. He turned back to her. You were standing in the corner, terrified, hoping someone would notice. Your mother had just died. You'd gone into debt paying for her treatment. You were 3 months behind on rent and about to drop out of school. His eyes held hers. I know what it's like to lose a parent. I know what it's like to fight for something when the world tells you to quit. So I made some calls. I ensured you could finish school. After that, I kept watching. To what end? Celia's voice rose. What do you want from me, Mr. Romano? Because nobody invests 2 years and God knows how much money without wanting something. I want you to succeed, he said it simply, like it was obvious. I want to see what you build when you're not drowning. I want to watch someone with real talent actually make it, instead of watching it get crushed by people like your ex-boyfriend who can't stand anyone being better than them. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Lorenzo moved closer, and Celia forced herself not to step back. I don't need anything from you, Celia. I don't need your gratitude, your compliance, or your company. I have enough money, enough power, enough of everything that matters in my world. What I don't have is the satisfaction of watching someone I believe in prove me right. Celia's mind spun. 2 years. Everything she'd thought she'd achieved, the grant, the boutique, the magazine feature, all of it contaminated by his invisible hand. You took away my agency, she whispered. You made me think I was fighting alone when I was never really alone. Would you have accepted help if I'd offered it openly?
No.
Exactly, Lorenzo's expression softened. You needed to believe in yourself first. You needed to know you could survive on your skill alone. Now you know. Everything you've created, every piece you've designed, every client you've satisfied, that was you. I just made sure you had the space to do it. Celia wanted to be angry. She wanted to feel violated, manipulated. But underneath the shock was a strange, hollow relief, the feeling of finally understanding why doors had opened when they shouldn't have, why opportunities had appeared at exactly the right moments. The commission, she said. The $60,000. That's real, isn't it? You actually need suits made.
Ida.
3 suits, to those exact specifications. I'm not inventing work to give you money, Lorenzo picked up his whiskey again. But I won't pretend it's not also an opportunity for you to accept help openly this time, without pretending it's something else. And if I refuse, then you refuse. The security stays regardless. You're already a target now, whether you take my money or not. But the financial support, the connections, the help rebuilding your reputation. He shrugged. That's your choice. Celia walked to the windows, looking out at Chicago. Somewhere down there, Marco was posting lies about her. The Moretti brothers were reporting back to their boss. Her boutique sat dark and vulnerable. She'd wanted to succeed on her own terms. But maybe on her own had always been an illusion. Everyone who succeeded had help from somewhere, family money, industry connections, lucky breaks. Was Lorenzo's help really so different? I'll make your suits, she said quietly. But I have conditions. Behind her, Lorenzo smiled. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. The Lakeview Influencer Gala was exactly the kind of event Marco Castellano lived for. Open bar, Instagram backdrops, and a room full of people desperate to be noticed. He'd talked his way onto the guest list by claiming he was covering it for his brand. Really, he was there to destroy Celia Hart once and for all. He nursed a vodka tonic near the Step and Repeat banner, watching micro-celebrities pose for photos. His own Instagram had been hemorrhaging followers since Celia's response video. Brands that had been interested in partnerships had gone silent. His father had stopped returning his calls. But Marco had a plan. He'd spent the last 3 days fabricating evidence, photoshopped screenshots of fake text messages, doctored bank statements, even a recording he'd created using audio editing software. All of it designed to prove that Celia had slept with investors to fund her career, that she was a fraud who used her body instead of talent. It was complete fiction, but it looked real enough to destroy her.
Marco Castellano.
A PR coordinator with a clipboard approached. We didn't have you on the list. Last-minute addition. I'm documenting the event. He flashed his phone with its 62,000 followers, down from 68,000, but she didn't need to know that. Great exposure for your sponsors. The coordinator hesitated, then nodded.
Fine.
But please keep the aisles clear.
Marco Smail.
He'd learned early that confidence could get you anywhere. He waited until the main presentation started, some boring talk about sustainable fashion and ethical manufacturing. The room was packed with fashion bloggers, small-time designers, brand representatives, people who mattered in the industry. Perfect audience for what he was about to do. During the Q&A session, Marco raised his hand. The moderator, a fashion journalist from Chicago Magazine, called on him. Marco Castellano, independent journalist, he stood, making sure his phone was recording. I have a question about industry ethics. Specifically, about designers who sleep with investors to fund their businesses instead of earning success through actual talent. The room went quiet. The moderator frowned. I'm not sure that's relevant to. I'm talking about Celia Hart, Marco's voice carried across the room. The designer everyone's been defending lately? I have proof she's been running a scam. She takes money from wealthy men in exchange for personal favors, and then claims her success is based on merit. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Phones came out. That's a serious accusation, the moderator said carefully. Do you have actual evidence, or? I have screenshots of conversations with investors. I have bank records showing unexplained deposits. I have testimony from people who witnessed her soliciting these arrangements. Marco pulled up his fabricated evidence on his phone. I tried to warn people at her exhibition, but she's got everyone fooled. Someone needs to expose the truth. A woman in the front row stood up. That's libel. You can't just accuse someone of. I'm not accusing. I'm reporting facts. Marco's heart raced with adrenaline. This was his moment. Celia Hart is a fraud who uses sex to get ahead, and I can prove it. I'm uploading everything to my social media right now. People deserve to know who they're supporting. The moderator looked desperately at security. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to. The truth matters.
Marcos Chautid.
She's been lying to all of you, and I'm the only one brave enough to say it. His finger hovered over the post button. One click, and Celia's career would be over. No recovery this time. No inspirational video could fix this. Mr. Castellano. The voice came from the back of the room. Quiet, but it cut through the chaos like a knife. Lorenzo Romano stood near the exit, flanked by two men in dark suits. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit, one of Celia's designs, though Marco didn't know that, and his expression was completely calm. The room recognized him instantly. Conversations died. Even the moderator went pale. Mr. Romano, she stammered. We didn't realize you were attending. I'm a silent sponsor. Lorenzo's eyes never left Marco. Mr. Castellano, I'd like a word with you. Privately. Marco's thumb froze over his phone. I'm in the middle of. It wasn't a request. Two of Lorenzo's security team moved up the aisles. Marco looked around wildly, but no one would meet his eyes. The other attendees had suddenly become very interested in their shoes. This is a public event, Marco tried. You can't just. I can. Lorenzo gestured toward a side door. We can do this here in front of everyone, or we can do it somewhere private. Your choice. Marco's vodka tonic sloshed as his hand shook. He'd known Lorenzo Romano was connected to Celia somehow. The internet had been full of speculation after her video, but he thought it was just rumors.
Gossip.
He hadn't thought Romano would actually show up. Fine, Marco tried to sound defiant. Let's talk. He followed Lorenzo out of the ballroom and onto a private terrace overlooking the Chicago River. The night air was cold, but Marco was sweating. Lorenzo stood at the railing, looking out at the water. Tell me, Mr. Castellano, do you know what happens to men who spread lies about women under my protection? I'm not lying. I have proof. You have Photoshop and audio editing software. Lorenzo turned, and his eyes were empty of anything resembling mercy. Did you really think I wouldn't have someone check your computer? Your cloud storage? Your deleted files? Marco's blood went cold. We recovered everything you manufactured. The fake screenshots. The doctored bank statements. The audio file you pieced together from podcast clips. Lorenzo pulled out his own phone. Would you like to see? On the screen, Marco watched himself, security footage from his apartment, showing him hunched over his laptop, editing images, creating fake evidence. Timestamps proved every file was created in the last 3 days. You can't use that. That's illegal surveillance. So is defamation, libel, harassment, assault. Lorenzo's voice dropped. So is tearing a woman's dress in public and then spending weeks trying to destroy her reputation because she had the audacity to leave you. Marco backed toward the door, but Lorenzo's security blocked it. I'm going to give you a choice, Lorenzo said quietly. And I suggest you choose wisely. Marco's back hit the terrace railing. The Chicago River glittered 60 feet below, dark and cold. Lorenzo stood 5 feet away, close enough to be threatening without touching him. I don't respond well to threats, Marco said, trying to sound brave. His voice cracked halfway through. I'm not threatening you. Lorenzo adjusted his cufflinks, a casual gesture that somehow felt more dangerous than a raised fist.
I'm explaining consequences.
There's a difference. One of Lorenzo's men handed him a tablet. Lorenzo swiped through it, then turned the screen toward Marco. This is security footage from the Milan Fashion Hall. Full HD, multiple angles. With audio, Lorenzo played the video. Marco watched himself wait outside the exhibition, checking his phone, practicing his stumble, then entering, perfectly sober, before switching to his drunk act. You planned the assault. You rehearsed it. This wasn't a drunken mistake. It was premeditated humiliation. Marco's throat went dry. That doesn't prove anything. It proves intent. Lorenzo swiped to another file. These are the contracts you signed with 3 gossip blogs, agreeing to create viral content at the exhibition in exchange for promotional coverage and affiliate revenue. You sold the video rights before you even tore her dress. That's not, I didn't. You did. Lorenzo's voice stayed level, almost bored. You weaponized your ex-girlfriend's most important night to boost your social media engagement. You turned her trauma into content. Another swipe. These are your text messages with friends, discussing exactly how you'd take her down and show everyone what a fraud she is. You coordinated your Instagram posts with 3 other influencers to maximize the damage. Lorenzo looked up from the tablet. You didn't just humiliate her once, Mr. Castellano. You built an entire campaign around destroying her. Marco tried to speak, but nothing came out. Every defense died in his throat because Lorenzo had everything, evidence Marco didn't even know existed. And tonight, Lorenzo continued, you brought fabricated evidence to a public event, intending to accuse Celia of prostitution, which, legally speaking, is defamation per se. You don't even need to prove damages. The accusation itself is actionable. I want a lawyer. You'll need several. Lorenzo set the tablet aside. But first, you're going to make a choice. Option 1. I release all of this to the public. Every piece of evidence, every calculation, every moment of cruelty. Your face becomes synonymous with abusive ex-boyfriend. Your father's business suffers because no one wants to work with the family that raised you. You spend the next decade fighting lawsuits you can't afford. Marco's knees felt weak. What's option 2? You fix this. Publicly, completely, and immediately. Fix what? Lorenzo pulled out his phone and opened a notes app. You're going to record a video statement. You're going to admit that you tore Celia's dress deliberately. You're going to explain that you fabricated evidence against her because you couldn't handle her success. You're going to apologize without qualifications or excuses. That'll destroy me. Yes, Lorenzo's expression didn't change. It will. But it's the only option that lets you keep walking upright. And if I refuse, then I don't just release the evidence. I make sure every employer, every business partner, every woman you ever try to date knows exactly what you are. The Romano family has long memories and longer reach, Mr. Castellano. You'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. Marco's mind raced, searching for an escape, a loophole, anything. But Lorenzo had him cornered with nothing but the truth. Every crime Marco had committed, documented, and inescapable. People will hate me, Marco whispered. People should hate you. You did something hateful. Lorenzo leaned against the railing, almost casual. Here's what you don't understand. You didn't just attack Celia. You attacked the idea that women can succeed without men controlling them. You attacked the notion that talent matters more than connections. You tried to teach her that speaking up would only bring more pain. Lorenzo's voice hardened. Men like you are why women stay silent. Why they take abuse and call it love. Why they let their dreams die rather than risk humiliation. He stepped closer. Celia didn't stay silent.
She fought back.
And that terrified you, because if she could survive without you, it meant you never mattered in the first place. Marco's eyes burned. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but every word Lorenzo said landed like truth he'd been running from. I loved her, he said weakly. No, you didn't. You loved controlling her. There's a difference. Lorenzo pulled up a blank video screen on his phone. Now make your choice. Record the apology. Face the consequences of your actions like an adult, and maybe, you get to rebuild something resembling a life. Or refuse, and I promise you'll regret it for however long you have left. How long I have left? Marco's voice cracked. Is that a death threat?
No.
It's a guarantee that every single day will feel longer than the one before. Lorenzo held out the phone. I'm not going to kill you, Mr. Castellano. I'm going to make you live with what you've done. The question is whether you own it or spend your life running from it. Marco stared at the phone. His reflection looked back from the black screen, scared, small, pathetic. Everything he'd always been, underneath the Instagram filters and the bravado. What do I say? He asked, his voice barely audible. Lorenzo's smile was cold and satisfied. The truth. For once in your miserable life, you're going to tell the complete truth. He pressed record. And Marco Castellano's carefully constructed life began its final collapse. The video went live an hour later. By morning, it would have 5 million views. And Celia Hart would finally be free. Celia was at her sewing machine when her phone exploded. It was 6 a.m. She'd been working since midnight, hand-stitching the lining into Lorenzo's first suit. The specifications were complex, but the work gave her something to focus on besides the anxiety that had lived in her chest since the gala. Sarah had texted her about Marco's scene, how he'd tried to accuse her of sleeping with investors, how Lorenzo had intervened. But neither of them knew what had happened after Marco left with Lorenzo. Celia had been too afraid to ask. Now her phone lit up with notifications so fast it looked like a slot machine. Instagram, Twitter, email, text messages, hundreds of them, all coming in at once. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. The first message was from her old roommate, Celia. Oh my God, watch this. A video link. She clicked it with her heart in her throat. Marco's face filled the screen. He sat in what looked like an empty office, the lighting harsh and unflattering. His eyes were red. He'd been crying. My name is Marco Castellano, he began, his voice hoarse. And I need to tell the truth about what I did to Celia Hart. Celia's breath caught. 3 weeks ago, I attended her fashion exhibition. I wasn't drunk, even though I pretended to be. I went there specifically to destroy her work in front of investors. Marco's hands shook as he held up his phone. I have text messages proving I coordinated with gossip blogs to film the incident. I signed contracts agreeing to create viral content in exchange for promotional coverage. I turned my ex-girlfriend's biggest professional moment into a planned attack. The video quality was crystal clear. This wasn't some grainy phone recording. Someone professional had filmed this. Lorenzo. I tore her dress deliberately, Marco continued. I grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. I humiliated her in front of the people she needed to impress, and then I spent 3 weeks spreading lies about her work, her character, her integrity. His voice broke. I did it because I couldn't stand that she was succeeding without me. I did it because when she left me, it destroyed my ego, and I wanted her to hurt the way I hurt. Tears ran down his face now. Everything I posted was a lie. The dress didn't fall apart. I ripped it with both hands. Her work isn't fraudulent. It's extraordinary, and I knew it, which is why I had to destroy it before anyone else saw how talented she actually is. Marco wiped his eyes roughly. Last night, I tried to accuse her of sleeping with investors. I had manufactured evidence, fake screenshots, doctored bank statements, edited audio files. None of it was real. I made it all up because I wanted to ruin her life. The camera zoomed in slightly. Celia Hart never did anything wrong. She built her career through talent and hard work. She left me because I was controlling and abusive. Everything that happened to her was my fault. Marco looked directly into the camera.
I'm sorry.
I know that's not enough. I know I can't undo the damage. But I'm going to spend whatever time it takes making this right. The video ended. Celia sat frozen, the phone trembling in her hands. Sarah burst through the boutique door, still in her pajamas. Tell me you saw it. Tell me you watched it. I don't understand. Why would he confess everything? Because Lorenzo Romano made him, Sarah pulled up her laptop, showing Celia the explosion across social media. Marco's video had gone viral. Actually viral, not fake viral. News outlets were picking it up. Fashion blogs were retracting their hit pieces on Celia. It's everywhere. People are losing their minds. The comments under Marco's video were brutal. "This is the most pathetic thing I've ever seen. Imagine being so insecure you have to destroy someone's career. Men like this are why women can't have anything. He should be in jail. This is literally assault and defamation." Within an hour, every brand that had partnered with Marco dropped him. His father's real estate company released a statement distancing themselves. His Instagram followers were in free fall. But more importantly, the narrative around Celia had completely shifted. Fashion blogs that had mocked her were posting apologies. The Chicago Fashion Collective reinstated her membership with a formal statement praising her grace under pressure. Buyers who'd ghosted her were emailing, asking about her next collection. By noon, Celia's phone rang with a number she recognized from the Milan Fashion Hall. "Miss Hart? This is Rebecca Chun from the exhibition committee. We'd like to formally apologize for our security failure and offer you a complimentary spot in next season's showcase. Prime runway slot, no fee." Celia could barely process the words. Thank you. I'll need to think about it." "Of course. Take all the time you need," Rebecca paused. "For what it's worth, your work was the best thing at that exhibition. Everyone knew it. I'm sorry it took this long for people to say it out loud." After she hung up, Celia just sat in her workshop, surrounded by fabric and thread and the suit she'd been making for Lorenzo. Sarah brought her coffee. "You okay?" "I don't know." Celia looked at the video, still playing on loop in her mind. He confessed everything. His life is over. He earned it. "I know, but it doesn't feel. I thought I'd feel relieved. Or vindicated. But I just feel tired." Her phone buzzed again. This time, a text from an unknown number. "The lawyers are preparing the paperwork. Marco will be required to pay restitution for damages, lost income, and emotional distress. You'll never have to see him again. Vincent Calabrese." Below it, another message. "You're free now. The question is what you'll build with that freedom."
LR.
Celia looked around her boutique, the space she'd fought for, the work she'd bled for, the dream she'd refused to let die. Marco's confession had given her justice. But Lorenzo had given her something more dangerous, the certainty that she'd never have to fight alone again. And she wasn't sure how she felt about that. 6 months later, Chicago Fashion Week buzzed with anticipation. The Milan Fashion Hall, the same venue where Celia's career had nearly ended, was packed to capacity. Standing room only. Cameras from Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and Women's Wear Daily lined the runway. Backstage, Celia adjusted the collar of her lead model's jacket, a structured piece in midnight blue with hand-stitched silk lining. Her hands were steady now.
No trembling.
No fear. 2 minutes, Miss Hart, the stage manager called. Sarah appeared at her elbow, tablet in hand. The buyer from Nordstrom just confirmed an order for 50 pieces. Barney's wants an exclusive on your evening wear line. And some actress I've never heard of, but who has 8 million Instagram followers, is begging to wear your work to the Oscars. Celia smiled. Tell her we'll consider it. Look at you. Being selective. Sarah squeezed her shoulder. I'm so proud of you. The past 6 months had been a hurricane. After Marco's confession, Celia's career hadn't just recovered. It had exploded. Orders flooded in faster than she could fill them. She'd hired 3 seamstresses, moved into a proper studio, and started turning down work because she refused to compromise quality for quantity. The settlement from Marco, court-ordered restitution for assault, defamation, and lost income, had given her financial breathing room. But more than that, it had given her something she'd been fighting for since her mother died, the ability to build on her own terms. She'd finished Lorenzo's 3 suits. Each one had taken 80 hours of meticulous work, the kind of craftsmanship that couldn't be rushed. When she delivered them, He'd inspected every stitch with the same intensity he brought to everything, then paid her double the agreed price. For the artistry, he'd said simply. She tried to refuse the extra money. He'd looked at her with those dark, knowing eyes and said, "Learn to accept what you've earned, Celia. It's harder than you think." He'd been right. 30 seconds, the stage manager announced. Celia took a breath and walked to the edge of the curtain. Through the gap, she could see the audience. Fashion critics with their notebooks, buyers with their calculators, influencers with their ring lights. And in the front row, centered perfectly, sat Lorenzo Romano. He wore one of her suits. The charcoal gray with a subtle pinstripe, the one with reinforced lining and hidden pockets she'd never asked about. On anyone else, it would look like an excellent suit. On him, it looked like armor disguised as elegance. Their eyes met across the distance. He didn't smile, didn't nod. But something passed between them, an acknowledgement, a connection forged in crisis and built through mutual respect. The lights dimmed. Music swelled. Not the generic runway tracks, but a piece she'd commissioned from a local composer. Strings and piano, building slowly, telling a story of breaking and rebuilding. Her first model stepped onto the runway. The collection was called Reconstruction. Each piece referenced something broken made stronger. Visible mending in Japanese kintsugi style, seams that celebrated repair rather than hiding it, structured garments that looked soft but could withstand anything. It was beautiful. It was honest. It was everything she'd learned about surviving. The audience leaned forward. Cameras flashed. She heard someone whisper, "This is extraordinary." Piece after piece walked the runway. A white evening gown with gold-threaded scars running through the silk. A leather jacket with exposed, reinforced stitching. A dress that looked delicate but was constructed to last decades. For her finale piece, Celia had recreated the emerald dress Marco had torn, but transformed. She'd kept the original beadwork where it survived, added new elements in silver and gold, and restructured the entire back with visible, decorative stitching that made the repair part of the design. It was a dress that said, "Yes, I was broken. Look how beautiful I became anyway." The model, Celia's first hire, a girl from the same neighborhood where she'd grown up, wore it with fierce pride. The audience erupted in applause. Then the stage manager looked at Celia. "You're supposed to go out for the bow." Her stomach flipped. She'd walked this runway once before, in a dress that tore, in front of people who'd watched her humiliation. But she wasn't that person anymore. Celia stepped onto the runway. The applause grew louder. Critics stood. Buyers stood. Even the jaded fashion bloggers put down their phones to clap. She walked to the end of the runway, her head high, wearing one of her own designs, a simple black dress with structural seams that looked like art. When she reached the end, she bowed. The audience roared. She straightened, and her eyes found Lorenzo again. He was standing with everyone else, but unlike the others, he wasn't clapping. He simply stood, his expression proud and certain, allowing the entire world to see what he'd known all along. The woman who overcame humiliation with creation. The woman who turned trauma into art. The woman who refused to let anyone, not her ex, not his violence, not viral mockery, define her worth. As Celia walked back through the curtain, Sarah crashed into her with a hug. "You did it. You actually did it." "We did it," Celia corrected, her voice thick with emotion. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but she knew who it was. "Beautiful work. Your mother would be proud."
LR.
Celia looked at the message for a long moment, then typed back. "Thank you. For everything. Even the things I didn't want." 3 dots appeared then. "You never needed saving, Celia. You just needed the space to save yourself. I'm glad I could provide it." She slipped the phone into her pocket as buyers and journalists flooded backstage, all wanting a piece of her success. Sarah fielded questions while Celia stood in the center of controlled chaos. The chaos of demand, of opportunity, of a future she'd built stitch by stitch. Marco was gone, destroyed by his own cruelty. Lorenzo remained at a respectful distance, a shadow that protected without controlling. And Celia's heart stood exactly where she'd always dreamed, at the center of her own story, writing the ending herself. The dress had torn, but she had rebuilt herself into something unbreakable. And that was the most beautiful design of all. The end.